their talk on documentation domination is going to be a good one. One of the reasons why I thought that bringing them here to speak was important is because they both have an unusual background for what they do in their organizations. They both come from education, which, as I got to know them, realized plays such an important role in how they look at their responsibilities for sharing knowledge within a very fast-moving organization like Braintree. So quick background on each of our speakers. Carolyn, her primary focus is maintaining and developing the public-facing content for support articles. And she also has a background in theater. She spent 4 years in the Moscow Art Theater School. So that's awesome. And Liz has been at Braintree since 2011, and she discovered her passion for good documentation as part of the support team. She now leads the group of technical communicators on a mission to improve collaboration between operations and product teams. She also recently earned her master's degree in global technology and development and wrote her master's thesis on social media in the Arab uprising. So that's also really awesome. All right, give them a hand.
Can you guys hear me? All right. Well, good morning. I'm Liz Gray, the knowledge management lead for Braintree. I've worked in technical roles since I started at Apple over 10 years ago. After that, I served as a director of technology at a charter school in Chicago, and I've spent the last 4 years at Braintree.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Sinnen. I have a super eclectic background in my career. I worked at a skateboard shop for over 5 years, and then I moved into education. I taught at a public Montessori school for 4th and 5th grade, and then I also moved on to youth directing for local community centers. I moved into the tech world through Groupon when I moved to Chicago. I started out in customer service there, and then began as a writer for their customer service canned responses and announcements. And after that, I moved to Braintree, which is where I work as a technical communicator, and I focus on as Elena said, I focus on the public-facing merchant support articles.
So before we get started, let me give you just a quick background on Braintree. Braintree was founded in 2007. We make it possible for companies all across the globe to accept payments online via web and mobile. Our reputation is based on providing outstanding support to our merchants. When I started in August 2011, Braintree was still a bootstrap startup, and I was its 37th employee. In the fall of 2011, Braintree was ranked number 47 in Inc.'s 500 fastest growing companies. In 2012, Braintree acquired Venmo, a social payments platform that allows you to pay friends and include emoji-strewn comments and cryptic messages like Manifest Destiny. In 2012, Braintree expanded its service into Europe, Canada, and Australia. We also began to focus much more closely on improving the mobile payment experience for companies including Airbnb and Uber. And in 2013, we were acquired by a company you've probably heard of before. And that brings us up to where we are at today.
So we've been a part of PayPal now for about 2 years, and that has caused humongous growth for us. Now, Braintree is at close to around 500 employees, and those are Braintree-specific employees. Then on the other side, PayPal has somewhere around 12,000, so that's pretty massive from the 37 when Liz started. This has definitely impacted our strategies and how we're going forward with our knowledge management, but our message has always stayed the same, and that our goal is to support the people who support our customers. And we do that in 3 different ways. So for us, we use Confluence for our internal knowledge base, which we call our wiki. And that's where we house everything about Braintree that any Braintree employee needs to know about anything. And that includes our products, our internal products, products for our merchants, HR information, info on our offices, everything. We also help teams build out technical documentation as well as policy and procedure specific to each one of their teams. We also have our public-facing merchant support articles. And those offer walkthroughs, guides, and reference material for our less tech-savvy merchants. So these are the ones that I work on. So these are geared more towards business owners that are interested in becoming clients. These are hosted in GitHub, and they're published at articles.braintreepayments.com. Our third one that we have are our API docs, and those are for our tech users and developers. Those also offer walkthroughs, product guides, and reference material, and those are also hosted in GitHub under developers.braintreepayments.com.
Today we're just going to focus on the Confluence aspect of our work, so the internal wiki, as we call it. Over the next half hour, we're going to tell you more about where our documentation journey started, some of the problems we've encountered along the way, 4 easy steps we can offer you for your own efforts, and how we're measuring progress. First up, where we started. So it was mentioned briefly, but I started at Braintree as part of the merchant support team. Up-to-date and easily accessible information was critical to answering questions and resolving issues in a timely manner. But internal information was spread across a handful of different wikis, Google Docs, whiteboards, Post-it notes, backs of hands, you get the gist. It was obvious that people recognized the need for documentation, but the relevance and reliability of it was questionable. Different wikis had pages on the same subjects, but details which conflicted. There were also personal grocery lists and a bunch of other unnecessary stuff. I had one too many support tickets blow up in my face because of bad information. It became clear that the system we had in place wasn't working, so knowledge management became a top personal priority. I worked with several team members to review different potential solutions, and they found Confluence to be the most accommodating to the company's needs. Confluence was easy to use, which appealed to non-technical teams. It was easy to modify, which appealed to developers. Content could be easily migrated from other wikis, which was ideal for me. And expansion options allowed us to tailor our instance to our specific needs. For example, the ability to host Confluence on our own servers was important to our engineering and security teams. The Atlassian marketplace has also been incredibly useful for functionality expansion. Once we decided on Confluence as our solution, I partnered with the lead engineer to plan our approach. So first, the engineer set up our Confluence instance. I then created users for about 100 employees, hosted training sessions over the next month, and created reference material that lived in the wiki. After teams were trained on the new home for information, I manually migrated content from one old source at a time and then froze its editing permissions. This also took about a month to complete since I was doing it in addition to my support responsibilities. When the migration was complete, we formally announced that Confluence was king and began limiting access to old repositories of information. A complete shutdown of old resources started after 90 days. So from start to finish, the migration of 790 pages and the creation of training of just under 100 users took about 3 months. After the migration of all of Braintree's information was complete, I had one goal: build a docs army. So, despite the highly technical nature of a lot of the content we work with at Braintree, we prioritize several key skills when building the docs team. First, candidates had to be exceptional communicators, willing and able to tailor the delivery style to the audience, so it's kind of unsurprising that most of our team have past roles in education. Attention to detail is critical in our field. Mistakes could cost our customers money. Candidates needed to be self-starters. We needed team members who could identify needs and take the initiative to address them accordingly. And though they weren't expected to come in with technical knowledge of our industry, candidates had to be willing and able to learn and then disseminate technical information accurately. So here we are today with a team of 4, including myself.
Okay, so at this point, we've decided to go with Confluence. We've crowned them as king. We've migrated all of our old information over and locked those down, and we've built our docs army. So, all of our problems are solved. Yes. No, they are not solved. We encountered all of the problems, and so it's tough when you are trying to modify established workflows. Employees, especially in technical, in startups, a lot of our employees are really smart, really quick, and they will set up their workflows in a way that works best for them, and they're usually pretty proud of how quickly they can move through things. So when you're trying to lead the charge for change, it can be difficult, to say the least. But we knew that in order to be successful, we had to get people involved and excited about documentation. But how do you do that when most people don't like change and time is limited? It's tough to get time to train your employees on these things, and once you do get the time, attention can be limited as well. And also, you're dealing with different learning styles. Just like writing an article, you have to know who your audience is and how you can communicate to them. Repeating the same thing over and over the same way isn't going to cut it. So we've got to approach training in multiple ways to make sure everyone's set up for success. So we asked ourselves,
how do we get people to want to be involved? Why is it valuable to them? Why does it matter that they contribute? And what happens if they don't? From there, we came up with 4 steps that will make your documentation efforts much easier if you consider them in advance. So first, be sure to provide lots of training resources and be prepared to repeat yourself. In our case, training sessions were held and quick tips were distributed prior to the move to Confluence, also known as the wiki, but there was still some resistance to change. It was a forced march to begin with, which afforded me the opportunity to assume the title of Wiktator. Anytime I was asked a question, I would respond with, "Have you checked the wiki?" An initiation process developed. Team members started responding to questions with a link to a page rather than a direct answer, and reminding each other to check the wiki in creative ways. So, playful prodding is a part of our culture. It's directly related to the bootstrapped, wear many hats, get shit done attitude that Braintree was founded on. Everyone's expected to reference and contribute to the wiki. So, custom GIFs and memes like the ones you see here are dropped in chat rooms in response to requests for information that could easily be found, or to new discoveries that team members think should be added to the wiki. My time as Wiktator is coming to an end, and that's good. I don't need to beg, plead with, or coerce other teams into using the wiki. It's a necessity to them.
So tip number 2 is to encourage participation. In teaching, I found that the most effective way to get new information to stick is through active participation. So the way that we did that, we had a couple different things that we did. We left editing permissions open to all employees in Confluence. So that way, this encouraged them to be involved and also have a sense of ownership over the content within the wiki. Everyone was contributing, and everyone had a sense of ownership over that. In the beginning, people were doing all of this in their free time. Again, there's no documentation team at this point, and everybody's got their own personal investment in bringing new information into our new wiki. We even had a developer who used his free time to customize the display of quick search results, and now we've integrated it into training and everyday workflows. So we created a new course in our Braintree University called BTU 411. And our Braintree University is the new hire training that everybody goes through when they come to Braintree. So this class was set up to teach the ins and outs of the wiki and get people introduced to it right away. One of the things that we do in our training is we have them set up their personal space, which is a place where you can create new content and just have your own area where you're doing all of it, right? And so one of the things that we do is we have them set it up during the class, and then we set them free. We say, use this as your space to experiment and explore. There's so much that Confluence has to offer. It would be impossible to just sit there and teach it and have everybody remember all of it. So one of the biggest focuses that I put in that training class is like, all right, guys, here you go. Be free. Have fun. Break things, fix them, find out as much as you can through doing. We also started our weekly update, and that was set as a weekly newsletter for internal communication that we host in Confluence, which was a platform that we gave for teams to share information with the rest of the company. So team updates, product updates, and anything else they want to share with general announcements and things like that. So what was originally sort of disguised as an internal newsletter became quite an ally for us, because it got teams involved and invested in this sort of community of sharing information. So teams wanted to share updates, and teams wanted to share updates about products and any other general announcements that they have. And it also gave our team visibility to the company. It reminded them that though we are small, we are mighty, and we are here, and we're here to help everyone. It also provided a weekly Wiki PSA, which was an ongoing learning tool where we were provided a new tip about Confluence that people may not have known before, whether it's a new macro that we found that was super helpful that we didn't even know about before, or if there was some sort of shortcut that people may not have known about until then.
So helping leaders see the value in investing resources, specifically in documentation, takes time, but it is critical. Start collecting metrics as well as anecdotal information on the use and value of your knowledge base as soon as possible. Use it to inform your plans and requests for dedicated resources. For example, we measure what we do based on commit and pull request data from GitHub, resolve ticket counts in Desk, and most recently through internal teams' responses to our State of the Doc survey.
Finally, and we really can't stress this enough because this is something that we are very familiar with, plan for rapid growth. Even if you don't think it's coming, make sure you're ready for it. And this is why. For us, content and user count has grown by nearly 10 times in the past 2 years. And this introduced new challenges. So, in addition to building a content management team, the Docs team, we've also had to come up with new solutions. So one of the things that we did is we got our IT desk to help with user management. So anytime we have a new user or someone needs new permissions, they actually go through our help desk as opposed to directly to our team, because that would be an insane amount of requests all the time. We also had to move to a comment-only permission to begin with. So when we started out, we had editing permissions for everybody once they started. And now we have had to move to a comment only. And that's been affected mostly by being merged with PayPal. So bringing PayPal in, there was a lot of demand for access to our wiki, and rightfully so. You know, we're companies together and we work together. So the reason we moved to comment only is because we needed a way to be able to make sure that updates were being made by team members who understood the products fully and should be editing them. That being said, we do have a process going through Help Desk that gets people editing permissions easily if they need it. We're also currently exploring the idea of having content managers for each team so that they're sort of in charge of being able to go through and make sure that the content within certain products is correct and up to date, and if there's someone who's looking to create new content within the team, it's someone that they can go to that we can rely on to keep it updated and correct.
We're new enough as a team that we're still in the process of formally measuring our success, but things are looking very good. Today, I generally hear if the wiki has gone down before I see it. If people are upset and feel that they need access to a particular resource for their job, you know it's valued. Want became need. In May, we sent out our first survey asking employees a handful of questions. First, how regularly do you use the wiki? How critical is it to your job? How accurate is it? How easily can you find what you need? And what would you like to see change or improve? 93% of surveyed employees reported using the wiki regularly for their jobs. The general consensus in May was that the wiki was a necessary tool for employees, but the accuracy of some of the information was still questionable. Since then, we focused on these three things to improve the experience. First, Awareness of the wiki needs to start at the door. We've worked with our training teams to ensure that the wiki course is part of every new hire's education. We continue to educate employees on the wiki's value by providing tips and tricks for better wiki use in our weekly update public service announcements. And finally, we've hired someone whose role is specifically dedicated to improving the wiki's content quality. So this just happened. We completed our second survey of the year and learned that 95% of respondents now say they regularly use the wiki for their jobs. On a 5-point scale, the average rating of regularity of use went from 3.6 to 3.9. The wiki's criticality to employees' jobs went from 3.5 to 3.7. Perceived accuracy stayed at 3.5. And searchability went from 3.2 to 3.3. Comments like this and this illustrate that employees are willing to contribute but need more direction. And key phrases in other comments mention the importance of consistency, uniformity, and searchability. These results reaffirm the importance of our original focal points, and they emphasize that accuracy and searchability require the most attention going forward.
So we've come a long way in the past 2 years. So let's take a look at that timeline. In March of 2014, Liz was the only one with a role focused on docs. After she finished the wiki migration, we were able to convince one of our support colleagues, Sarah, to join her as of May 2014. After that, the release of a new client library in June 2014 increased the need for improvements in our documentation. So Liz and Sarah took advantage of the opportunity and got approved to hire our first doc-specific teammate, Christina, in July of 2014. Within a month of Christina's arrival, the team went to San Francisco to meet with the devs behind the new client library and their corresponding documentation. Together, they built a grand plan to improve the API docs and move all of the support articles into the same docs on GitHub. They also got approved to hire an additional person to facilitate the creation of the support articles, so I joined the team in November. And today is my 1-year anniversary. Thank you. All right, so I joined the team and we released the new support articles. So we basically, before they were hosted in Desk, we took them out, we rewrote all of them, and we moved them into GitHub and published them at our articles.braintreepayments.com. Once we've done that, we needed to get our internal documentation in order. So we hired Marty in April of 2014 specifically for this purpose. She is the new Wiktator. Sarah moved on to an operations project manager and has been a great ally in spreading the word of documentation along the way. So our struggle today is that we have too much information. It leads to a lot of different types of problems. One of the biggest problems that we deal with is duplicate content. We have a lot of the same information in a lot of different places. The wiki is so huge at this point that it's hard to be able to keep track of where that's going. And when we have a lot of different people contributing, sometimes they don't realize that it already exists somewhere else. We also have a problem with stale pages, so pages that are created and then never updated. And so they're out of date, just like we had problems with before. And also, one of our biggest struggles, which I feel many people understand, is keeping a consistent vocabulary. There are a lot of different words for a lot of the same things, and they can be really confusing, especially in documentation if they're not consistent. So Marty was hired specifically to help improve the wiki and solve those problems. Her goals for the foreseeable future include creating a taxonomy, establishing a controlled vocabulary, eliminating outdated and duplicate information, identifying content experts that can help oversee quality and accuracy, which is one of the things I mentioned before that we're looking into doing, and then establishing a tiered permission structure. Marty has her master's in library sciences, so we are pretty confident she's going to be able to handle that.
The weight of the world is on our shoulders. All right, so we've had a promising start to the development of a culture that values documentation, and we intend to keep up this momentum. Implementing a controlled vocabulary will improve wiki search results and help new employees feel less overwhelmed by industry terminology. Identifying content experts in different departments within the company will help us ensure company buy-in and further boost the wiki's authority.
It also gives employees a point person to go to. If they're unsure where to find things, a content manager will be able to guide them to where they need to go. So, like we said earlier, fostering a documentation-minded culture can be challenging. But if you keep our 4 tips in mind, the pain will be less. So remember, provide lots of training and resources and be prepared to repeat yourself. Don't give up. Be persistent. Encourage participation. Get people excited about being involved and make sure that they're being active in what they're doing and give them the resources to be active in it. Make sure that leadership is on board. If you don't, the struggle is going to be real. Very, very real. And plan for rapid growth. Whether or not you see that coming, make sure you're ready for it.
That should be enough information to get you guys started, keep you busy for the next few months, so now we'll take questions. Sure.
So the first question was around what for templates for spaces. What do you do? What kind of templates do you provide?
You can repeat the question and then I'll just speak up.
Very good. So the question was, what do we do with templates and spaces?
Did you provide any structure or guides for spaces?
Structure or guides for spaces. Did we provide any structure or guides for spaces? Yes, we have built out specific structures. So Braintree processing payments, we have some standard questions that need to be answered anytime a new product is introduced. So we created templates specifically for payment methods versus banking relationships. And then team spaces were kind of left to their own devices. So in that sense, what we have, we've broken everything up into teams, products, and integrations, as well as partnerships. And that's the way in which we've separated that information out based on our specific industry and model.
Yeah, and we've left the team spaces really really open because something that's really interesting about the wiki that I talk a lot about in our training is that the teams use it in very different ways. Like each team has a specific way that they use the wiki, and so we wanted to keep the team spaces really malleable so that they could cater it to a way that works best for them. So some of our teams use it mostly for onboarding, and they have resources for new hires. But then our team, like our support team, has a massive IT knowledge base that they access, that they can search through anytime they're on the phone with a merchant that they have a question they need to answer.
It's also a repository for quotable text and procedures that are more complex.
Okay, another question is, what do you do about version control in documentations? Do you have a Confluence suggestion for that?
What do we do about version control in Confluence, and do we have a recommendation for that? So at this point, we don't have any specific tool that we're using for version control. We have been looking at K15T's scroll versions option as a product. We haven't implemented it yet, but that's something that we've been exploring pretty seriously at this point. It looks like it could be a really good option for us going forward. We didn't need it up until now because the Braintree product line was fairly well controlled, and we were in control of our destiny in a much more effective way. But now that we work more with PayPal, there is a lot of different stuff that's going around. So it's going to necessitate that. But at this point, honestly, we haven't implemented it. Scroll versions is something that we're looking into.
Remains to be seen.
Yes.
And last question, how is content migrated from other wiki to Confluence?
How is content migrated from other wikis to Confluence? It can be. MediaWiki was one of the places that information was stored, and that was a really easy migration because it was the developer's source of information. They did a data dump and gave me the raw files. And importing that in using just Confluence's import tools was, the mass import tool was more than sufficient. But it was at that point that we realized that a lot of the information that was migrated in was already like dead in the water, so then we had to clean things up, and that took more time. As for the other one that we used, it was PBWorks was the other wiki tool, and in that case, I page by page migrated the content in. Those were operations teams, so I was intimately familiar with what was valid and what wasn't, which was nice. But honestly, in that situation, I probably got really near developing carpal tunnel. It was just, one page at a time. But being able to use the web dev side of Confluence was pretty handy in being able to pull things over in chunks and then clean it up on the back end.
And really, as painful as it was, it's absolutely worth it in the end.
Yep. Thank you guys very much.
All right, thanks.